all the security and defense very much starts with the word resilience of our societies. But resilience actually grows out of understanding, public and popular understanding, that security, defense, and military matters in this case.
Hi, welcome. My name is Dr. Balkan Devlen. I am the director of the Transatlantic Program at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, and this is Insight Policy Talks. Today, I am delighted to join with Dr. Artis Pabriks, who is currently the chairman of the Northern Europe Policy Center in Latvia, but also the former deputy prime minister, former Minister of Defense and Foreign Affairs, as well as a former member of the European Parliament from Latvia. Art is also, if I may say, a good friend of the Institute, and we are delighted to have you here, Artis, to talk about both Canada and Latvia and our cooperation, particularly when it comes to a number of new technologies, including drones. So before turning to you, to talk about a little bit on this aspect. I want to highlight one more issue, what really sort of started this particular conversation, and that is you recently have a new position as the chairman for the Latvian Military Association of Drones, Robotics and Modern Technologies. And for our audience, Latvia also leads a political coalition, what's called Drone Coalition, in support of the defense of Ukraine against the Russian aggression. So drones and associated technologies, both software and hardware, is increasingly playing an important role in the battlefield. And Canada is also contributing to this drone coalition, as announcements back in the spring were made clear, and there are a number of Canadian companies that are actively engaged in it, and we keep seeing stories of how drones are playing a key role in the battlefield. So when you look at that particular picture, perhaps give us a little bit on what the association is about, and perhaps as well as the political coalition that Latvia put together when it comes to supporting the drone supplies to Ukraine, and how that actually enhances NATO security and make a contribution to the Ukraine's defense. And we'll take it from there, and how we can actually build upon the work you are doing in Latvia to enhance the cooperation between Canada and Latvia.
Okay, thank you, Balkan. And first of all, thank you for this opportunity. And secondly, of course, thank you to all our friends Canadians who understand the importance of our friendship and cooperation here in European continent, particularly with Latvia. As far as the drones and the political drone coalition, as you mentioned, I would say that especially because Latvian developments in the last years, developments in modern technologies and in drone industries, it helped our government and our Ministry of Defense to announce this political target of drone coalition to assist Ukraine, because we know that Ukraine is lacking basically all types of equipment in this very disastrous war of invasion, and drones are helping them very much. And if I may say so, then Latvian drone industry at this moment is kind of a leading in the region. At this moment, we have been also the first country which introduced 5G technologies in our military polygon. I think we even have been the first in European continent to do this, particularly to assist also our industries to work together with our military and to develop these things further. Now, because of this, Latvian Ministry of Defense in January this year announced that they are forming the drone coalition, political coalition, to bring together a number of international players, countries, in order to produce and deliver enough of good drones for Ukrainian army. And Latvian Drone Robotics and New Technologies Association is actually the branch from our, I would say, industrial and civil society, which is willing to help to fill in the tasks and targets of this drone coalition. And we would say that from our members, industrial members, I would say large part have been already checking their drones in a battlefield in Ukraine. So we know what type of production we can propose to Ukraine and actually also to our partners, including Canada.
No, I think that is an extremely important point, as you pointed out. The application of drones not necessarily change the nature of warfare, but what some of the scholars call the current war is the first war where you have the very high-end technologies and new technologies such as drones on the one hand and other sensors, but also First World War style trenches on the other, right? So it is what we see in Ukraine and in Ukraine's fight for its freedom and sovereignty is the both ends of this spectrum. Very high tech on the one hand and old school, rifles in hand, in the trenches on the other hand. And of course, it is important to how to integrate them together to achieve battlefield effects is what matters. And having this coalition is actually quite important for our own defenses going forward. And I think what I really sort of want to underlie here is when you look at the contributions that different NATO member states do. This particular one is not only about the defense of Ukraine, but it is also about the lessons learned for our own defense, for the NATO defense, and what we can learn from the experience that Ukrainians are purchasing by their blood in defense of our nations, and integrating that as a frontline state as Latvia is into our contribution actually punches beyond its weight in the sense that it provides a very niche capability that is going to be very, very important. So could you perhaps talk a little bit more on the defense industry component of this with this new association? What are the sort of the leading technologies and initiatives that the Latvian defense industry is putting forward, and of course what could very well be points of cooperation between Canada and Latvia going forward when it comes to the drones and modern technologies and robotics?
Yes, well, I could describe it from different angles, but I think one angle is highly important. Since we are, as you yourself mentioned, this frontline country, because some few hundred kilometers to the east, we have aggressor country Russia. And assessments, political and analytical assessments are very simple. No matter of the outcome of war in Ukraine, Russia will remain basically a challenger and a danger for Western democracies for the next decade or so. So we as a small country, we have to find the ways how we can think about security and defense in asymmetric way. And it's not only important for a small country. I believe that this is, and we believe that this is important for any country, including Canada, because what asymmetry means, it means that you can give, let's say, a relative amount of finances or of resources and get something much bigger back. And the drones are those technologies where, let's say, in Latvian case, with smaller amount, you can create a larger effect, which means you can reach larger goals despite of your size. We cannot produce in Latvia and even in Canada, thousands of tanks like Russians, but we can produce relatively cheap or more expensive high-tech drones, which can easily extinguish such type of enemies. So from that perspective, we are working on different distance drones, which are at this moment more known are FPV drones, of course, because they are the largest requirement for Ukraine at this stage. But my personal assessment and dream would be, as a former also defense minister, that such small country as Latvia, we would have drones which would fly 10 kilometers, which would fly 100, and which can fly 1 or 2 or 3,000 kilometers. And the price is still acceptable. The next thing, which is a challenge, of course, is that for instance, we have been among NATO countries and Western countries very much speaking about lack of, for instance, howitzer or ammunition of 155 millimeters. But what about ammunition for drones? Do we have it? Because it requires some specific necessities. This is what Latvian Association for Drones are ready to work as well. So the next thing is, how do we integrate different types of weapons with drones? Either drones in the sky, drones on the land, drones in the sea. Remember that Latvia have also 500 kilometers of sea borderline, and next to us is Russia, also in former Königsberg, Kaliningrad region, so Baltic Sea, and so I think we have quite a bit of experience which we would be willing to share with such a country as Canada. We, knowing that Canadians are our, I would say, one of the major partners also in our national and NATO security cooperation, because Canadians are building now a brigade here, international brigade, as much as we agreed in Madrid summit. So I believe that we have a great opportunity between Latvia and Canada, not only to develop this face-to-face military cooperation as far as our soldiers and armies, but also as far as our industries. So if there would be necessity for some Canadian investment or production here, or maybe some Latvian investment and cooperation in Canada. Speaking not only about drones, but also about these new weapon systems, ammunition production, also about electronic warfare. Because one thing is the drone is flying, another is how to neutralize that flying. And here again, I think we do have something as a small country which we can offer under the signature asymmetric war. We are small, but we don't want to lose.
No, I think that is super important in the sense, but two things. One is the fact that there are capabilities that Canada and Latvia can work together to develop very niche capabilities that are going to have a big punch on the battlefield compared to the costs associated with it. As you rightly pointed out, there is no resources or the ability to, organizationally, financially, etc., to put out 25,000 tanks in either country. But we do have specific capabilities, say, for example, the advanced optics and cameras here in Canada, a lot of the high-end drones are using to electronic warfare, especially with different spectrums in Latvia. As far as I know,
we actually produce them also.
Exactly, right. So particularly on the 5G and other communication technologies, Latvia is leading the pack over there, and having them working together to actually make a meaningful contribution to the defense of the alliance is both politically feasible, financially prudent, but also strategically smart thing to do. Now, I want to get back to one of the things we just highlighted with the Madrid summit. Of course, you were very instrumental in that summit with the defense minister from Latvia in terms of laying the groundwork for the upscaling of the battle group to a brigade level. And this July, the name change with the multinational group North Latvia to it, and Canada is providing more resources, but more needs to naturally come and fulfill those promises that were highlighted in Madrid summit and reaffirmed later on in Vilnius. You are also one of the most frank and open-speaking former politicians I've ever met. You're always very sharp to the point. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. You don't really go around the things and say things as they are, which is rare for politicians. So I would ask you straight away, as your insightful comments have always been quite beneficial to me and to other Canadians here. When you look at the multinational group, and how it's building up, do you see the pace of those developments sufficient? Do you think that we will be able to develop the necessary capabilities to foreclose and defend a potential Russian aggression in the next 3 to 5 years? I am more pessimistic about the sort of development of what Russian capabilities are and how the war is going in Ukraine. So we need to be prepared today to be able to defend what is coming down the line. When you look at that development, particularly the Canadian contributions, as well as the ongoing, defense spending debates over here, which is unfortunately very shameful for Canada that we're not there yet, and our Prime Minister pulls out, numbers out of the thin air without a plan. I am concerned that the pace is too slow to provide the NATO to Canadian troops the necessary capabilities to do their job. How do you see the development over there?
Well, I will try to be concentrated and brief. Now, first of all the security and defense very much starts with the word resilience of our societies. But resilience actually grows out of understanding, public and popular understanding, that security, defense, and military matters in this case. And I kind of could put myself in the boots of Canadians in Canada, and they might say, and you tell me if I'm wrong, look, we are so far away from Europe. We have strongest military country next to us, which is US. So actually, why should we Canadians spend our money on some defense, security, or military if nobody is probably planning to invade Canada today, tomorrow, or in the foreseeable future? And I would say that if you think so, then probably you are quite wrong. Because first of all, Canada is a country which have also already historic experience of involvement in the First World War and Second World War. And as longer you abstain, as longer you avoid as an ostrich the global problems which are interconnected, the larger price you would have to pay. So our goal with resilience in NATO, in Latvia, and everywhere else is, of course, to avoid the war. But to avoid the war, you can only, if you are capable and willing to look into the eyes of an enemy, not to be afraid of so-called escalation, and tell the spade is a spade. In Canadian case, actually, on the one hand, you have been great partners, but on the other hand, we can see that Canada, for instance, has a very close northern borders with Russia. And one of the activities where Russians will proceed a part of Europe, perhaps together with Chinese, is actually Arctics. And then Canada will miss a lot of international support and a lot of capabilities, starting with drones and ending with anything else. So what do we offer? We think that if we as a Western democracies, free countries, if we are sticking together, if we are assisting Ukraine on the one hand to win this war and to avoid another escalations from authoritarian countries like Russia, we have to invest in Ukraine. Secondly, Canadian brigade here, international brigade, it was kind of from the beginning, perhaps for some Canadian politicians, difficult to digest. But at this moment, I'm actually pleased that 2 years after Madrid summit, where I had myself a pleasure to negotiate this brigade issues and to get a signature out of Canadians that they will build this, I would say that Canadians are trustworthy partners. They keep their word. They build this brigade. And I would say that it's highly beneficial for Canada because your soldiers here, they get acquainted to the places of alliance where you have been pledged also to defend, as far as the 4th paragraph, 5th paragraph. Secondly, to learn together with Latvian soldiers, Spanish soldiers, Polish soldiers, just name it, because we have 11 nations represented here. It gives super additional skills to Canadian soldiers. You will never else learn these things. You cannot learn in other places to manage these drones, to manage, as you mentioned, these gambles, to just name this. And secondly, I think that this also gives an opportunity for Canada to develop their own, of course, industry, and to understand that we are so much intertwined together that if you neglect that security, then I'm now probably repeating, but if you neglect this, then the price must be much higher in future. So I would, of course, be very much willing also to urge and to ask Canadian citizens to understand that your kind of, at this moment, distant placement of your country doesn't make you much less vulnerable. Because if there would be an attack on Finland, Poland, Latvia, or any other country, you will be very much involved in this in any way. So better be prepared or avoid such possible conflict than simply play the game that all other issues are more important and neglect the defense. Because we can see that the West actually have been neglecting it for the last 2 decades, and now we already partly pay that price. So be smart in advance.
No, I cannot agree more. I mean, as I keep talking about how in the current international circumstances, the dichotomy between guns versus butter is a false one. That soon, if you don't have the guns, you will not have the butter. Right?
Nothing.
So, exactly. Right. So we need to be able to. We don't want to pay pennies today. We will pay hundreds of dollars in the future. And I would add one more thing to I think your very clear description. When I talk to my fellow Canadians, I tend to remind them that Russia is not a country far east to us. Russia is our neighbor to the north.
Precisely.
And there is and this is an increasing recognition that the Arctic and the Baltic are increasingly connected. The Russians think of that as a single operating space anyway. But with the inclusion of Finland and Sweden in NATO, we are now talking about major Arctic powers, also major Baltic powers. Denmark has always been, of course, but you also have Finland and Sweden, who are also both Arctic and Baltic powers. And I would argue that Canada, by the virtue of our presence in Latvia, is also a Baltic nation in that way. So we need to think those things much more closely and integrated in the way that we want to so explore it. And one last point, as you pointed out, the Arctic and the drones. When you look at the our North Strong and Free, the defense policy update that the Canadian Department of National Defense put out in April, one of the key components of that is ISR capabilities, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities, and sensors for the North. And these, given the harshness of the environment, and etc., will be primarily autonomous vehicles, be it air or undersea or on the sea sensors and drones, as well as space capabilities, to be able to see things over the horizon before they come to North America and threaten it. And again, the experience and technological development and cooperation between different defense industries on development of those long-range capable drone development, as well as other sensor development, which are very closely linked capabilities, and how to protect them from electronic warfare, in which the Russians are very, very good at.
Very good.
Is going to be a key national security concern for Canada. So again, engaging with these developments in Latvia, in Ukraine, are not only about those places. It is about the defense of Canadian sovereignty and Canadian security, because we will be relying on those technologies a lot. We're coming towards the end. I want to actually sort of end on talking a bit about the broader defense industry cooperation, potential defense industry cooperation between Canada and Latvia, both ways, both Canadian companies cooperating with Latvian companies and investing in Latvia, and vice versa. In addition to the electronic warfare and the drone segments, what other opportunities you see are ripe for advancing this cooperation between our two countries?
Well, I think we should look for the things where we can complement each other. And in our case, we have been, I think, as I mentioned before, very good with developments of drones, new products, existing products, and also already used products in Ukrainian front lines. We are very good with electronics. Either it is 5G, or it is reconnaissance, or it is gimbals, or it is also electronic warfare. We have also specific skills to develop some kind of new weapons systems, and also, if I may say now in this discussion, also specific ammunition. So many things which come up with innovation. You see, you don't need to be always a big country to have some kind of innovative skills, and we would be willing to discuss in a, let's say, more closed discussions between our industries with Canadians about these opportunities. And if our industries, if our scientists, if our industrialists can find a common language and promote each other, so we can help you and you can help us, I think it will simply bring our nations closer also on a military and economic aspects. So I think this is at the end, we want to live all more secure and more prosperous, and this is what we are offering to Canada.
No, exactly, and I cannot, like I said, agree further on the building on the existing close relationship between two countries, to be able to find those niche areas in which we can actually contribute to our own sovereignty and security, as well as the sovereignty, security, and prosperity of our allies and partners across NATO will be key. Well, Dr. Pabriks, thank you very much for joining me here today at Inside Policy Talks.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
For the audience, I've been talking with Dr. Artis Pabriks, former defense minister and deputy prime minister of Latvia, and currently the chairman of Northern Europe Policy Center for Defense and Security in Latvia, as well as the chairman for the Latvian Military Association for Drones, Robotics, and Electronics and Modern Technologies. Artis, thanks a lot, and we are looking forward to enhance our cooperation, both institutionally with the think tank you're leading, but also to enhance the cooperation between Canada and Latvia with your support. Thank you,
Balkan, and thank you, Canada, for good friendship.